A girl from the slums of Cartagena would one day smuggle 3,400 pounds of cocaine on a single plane, build an empire that turned Miami into a war zone, and become known as the cocaine godmother. In 2012, Griselda Blanco was gunned down on a Medellín street, consumed by the same violence she'd spent decades unleashing. But to understand how it ended, you have to go back to where it all began. Griselda Blanco was born on February 15 of 1943 in the crowded alleys of Cartagena. Her earliest memories were shaped by hunger and fear. The Blanco family lived in a single room with no running water, no steady work, and a mother forced into street labor to keep the children fed. When Griselda was still a child, the family joined the tide of migrants heading to Medellín, searching for a future in the city's sprawling barrios. But life in Medellín's slums offered little relief. Food was scarce, violence was constant, and every day meant a new fight to survive. School hardly factored into her childhood. Griselda managed only 2 years before her mother pulled her out, unable to pay for uniforms or books. By her own account, she never finished primary school, and police records from her teenage years describe her as illiterate. Without the shelter of education, her lessons came from the streets. She learned quickly that in LA Candelaria, strength and cunning mattered more than rules. By age 11, Griselda was already running with local gangs. The world she knew was ruled by pickpockets, hustlers, and petty thieves, many just children themselves. She joined a crew that survived on shoplifting and intimidation, sometimes resorting to violence to get what they needed. At 11, she took part in a kidnapping, a crime that earned her the nickname LA Madrina among the older boys. Her mentor, a former convict known as El Patriarca, taught her how to handle a pistol and how to collect debts by force. Police records from 1959 list her first arrest: aggravated theft and assault. She was just 16. Released after 3 months in a packed juvenile facility, she returned to the only world she knew, one where survival meant breaking the law. In a city where women were expected to stay invisible, Griselda used her appearance as cover, slipping through markets and nightclubs, learning to move undetected. As Medellín's criminal underworld grew, so did her reputation for fearlessness, violence, and a mind always calculating the next move. A single kilo of cocaine, hidden in a shoebox box, traveled from Colombia to New York in 1973. It was a modest shipment by later standards, but for Griselda Blanco, it was the first step into a new world. She was no longer just a streetwise survivor from Medellín. The shoebox kilo proved she could move product across borders and get away with it. That first run brought her into contact with Alberto Bravo, a trafficker already versed in smuggling tricks and underworld alliances. Bravo's methods were careful, his connections deep. He became Blanco's partner, and by 1975, her husband. Together, they began experimenting with new tactics, hiding cocaine in false bottom suitcases, recruiting couriers who could slip through customs unnoticed, even arranging airdrops over the Caribbean to bypass airport scrutiny. The partnership with Bravo was more than personal. It was a practical apprenticeship in the mechanics of international crime. With Bravo's guidance, Blanco learned how to build a network, how to coordinate shipments, and how to keep law enforcement guessing. The scale of their operation grew quickly. By 1976, the couple left New York behind and landed in Miami, a city on the verge of transformation. Miami's booming nightlife, crowded ports, and thinly stretched customs agents offered opportunity for anyone bold enough to seize it. Blanco was ready. She arrived with a plan, a growing reputation, and a willingness to do whatever it took to rise. The Shooks Box Kilo had opened the door. Miami would become her empire. Cargo jets rumbled into Miami under cover of darkness, their bellies packed with more than just produce. Griselda Blanco's operation transformed the city's airspace into an invisible highway for cocaine. At the heart of her logistics was the Boeing 727, a commercial freighter repurposed for crime. Engineers in her circle welded secret compartments into the cargo hold, sometimes even modifying passenger seats to hide bricks of cocaine. These innovations allowed a single flight to carry up to 3,400 pounds of product, enough to supply entire regions in one run. Speed was everything. From the moment a plane touched down, offload crews had less than an hour to empty the hidden holds, reload with legitimate cargo, and vanish before customs agents made their rounds. On the water, go-fast boats, sleek, stripped down, and built for raw power, could cover the 80-mile stretch from the Keys to Miami in just 45 minutes. Hidden fuel tanks and false hulls turned these boats into floating vaults, capable of outrunning Coast Guard patrols and blending into the chaos of South Florida's waterways. Blanco's reach extended to the ground as well. Couriers drove refrigerated trucks labeled as fruit distributors, moving shipments from private docks to inland hubs. The scale and precision of these routes left law enforcement scrambling. Detectives like Alan Singleton and Special Agent Robert Sanchez began tracking patterns, but each time they closed in, Blanco's network shifted tactics. Her engineering genius wasn't just in moving product, it was in staying one step ahead. Stacks of cash moved through Miami faster than the cocaine itself. Griselda Blanco understood that power was not just about moving product, it was about controlling the flow of money and the people who guarded the gates. Customs and Border Protection officers became her first line of defense. 3 key officials, each with access to cargo manifests and inspection schedules, received regular payments, enough to turn routine checks into a formality. DEA records from 1981 list these bribes as monthly, sometimes delivered in brown paper bags, sometimes wired through shell companies registered in Panama. The profits demanded a place to hide. Blanco snapped up luxury properties in Coconut Grove and Coral Gables, paying in cash or through layers of offshore accounts. By 1982, her real estate portfolio was worth millions. Neighbors whispered about the empty mansions, the parties that never seemed to end, and the armored cars parked out front. These homes were more than safe houses. They were vaults, meeting rooms, and, when needed, fortresses. Money laundering took on a new face in her hands. Nightclubs, car dealerships, and construction firms became fronts for washing drug profits. Each business gave her another shield against investigation and another channel for bribes. But the real ingenuity came in her courier network. Over 150 women, Many recruited from the same neighborhoods she once called home became her most trusted mules. Outfitted with custom-made bras and girdles, they carried cocaine past airport security with little suspicion. Gender worked in her favor. Female couriers drew less scrutiny from male agents and could blend into crowds with ease. With every bribe paid and property acquired, the system tightened around her. Corruption didn't just protect her empire. It locked the city into a cycle where power, money, and fear fed each other, making Blanco's hold on Miami nearly unbreakable, at least for a time. Jose Gomez never saw it coming. In April 1979, outside Club Santo, a hail of bullets cut him down in the street, a hit ordered by Griselda Blanco herself. The message was unmistakable. Rivals would be erased, no matter how public the stage. Gomez's murder wasn't an isolated act. Blanco's signature was violence, and her arsenal grew stranger by the year. By 1983, her enforcers carried a pistol disguised as a cane, a weapon designed for executions at close range. The body count rose. In 1984, a single massacre left 11 dead in a Miami stash house, the floors slick with blood and cocaine residue. Even hardened detectives began to talk about her with a mix of fear and disbelief. But the brutality had a cost. Law enforcement, battered but persistent, started to close in. In 1985, a wiretap operation intercepted coded calls and seized a ledger detailing $80 million in monthly profits. The evidence was overwhelming. Detectives traced the killings, the shipments, and the money back to Blanco's door. The empire she built on intimidation and ingenuity had become a target too big to ignore. As the net tightened, the reign of the cocaine godmother was coming to an end. Deported from the United States in 1995, Griselda Blanco returned to Medellín as a shadow of her former self. Years in prison had eroded her empire, but her name still carried weight in the city's criminal underworld. She kept a low profile, moving quietly through gated neighborhoods, rarely seen in public. Yet the past never stayed buried. On September 3, 2012, Blanco stepped out of a butcher shop in the Belén district. A man on a motorbike pulled up, drew a 9mm pistol, and fired 2 shots into her head before speeding away. The method was a grim echo. Motorcycle assassinations were once her signature. The hit was later traced to a leader of the Los Rastrillos gang, a new generation that had grown up on stories of the cocaine godmother. News of her death spread quickly. Within days, a grainy cell phone video of the crime drew over 7 million views online. For many, her killing closed a violent circle. In death, as in life, Griselda Blanco became a myth. Her story retold in headlines, documentaries, and whispered warnings across 2 continents. Power, bought with blood, always demands a price. Today, the drug corridors Blanco carved still funnel billions, fueling violence from Miami to Medellín. Her empire collapsed, but the machinery she built endures. In every city shaped by cocaine, her legacy lives on, in fear, ambition, and consequence. Share your thoughts below.